In this video, we are going to talk about flowing, what is flowing, and how to flow. First thing we'll start off with is what is flowing? Well, flowing is a way of taking notes about the occurrences of a debate round. There are a lot of things that occur in a debate round. There's a lot of arguments that are made by lots of different people in the round. And so you want to try to keep track of what is being said in the round. And flowing is used to be able to do that. In fact, flowing ensures two things. First, it ensures you answer your opponent's arguments, because if you keep a good flow of the arguments, then it's easy for you to be able to answer those arguments, because you know that they were said, they were mentioned. And therefore, when you write them down, you can remember to actually answer those arguments. The second is that it allows you to quickly write out nuances to the opponent's arguments that are being made. So if you notice that it's not a typical economy argument that's being made, but in fact they're talking about a double-dip recession, you can see that nuance, write it down quickly, and be able to recognize that you have to answer that argument a little bit differently than you did before. So now that we've kind of talked about what is kind of flowing in an abstract way, we're going to kind of talk about how you go about flowing. To go about flowing, you are actually going to have a lot of different pieces of paper. In fact, every single different advantage or contention of a 1AC will get its own piece of paper. For example, I've written out this one right here. It's a global warming advantage. And you can see up at the top left-hand corner, it says 1AC, and then I would usually put 1AC and then name the advantage. So this would be a 1AC warming advantage. And that would get its own single piece of paper. Each off-case position, critique, counterplans, disads, topicalities, specification arguments, those all would get their own piece of paper as well. And here we can see an economy disadvantage. You can see the impact all the way down there. And again, I always start off with the name of the argument, so this would be an economy disad up at the top. And so each advantage or contention of the 1AC gets its own piece of paper, just like this. So when people switch advantages or switch contentions, they would get their own piece of paper. And for every different off-case position, they would get their own piece of paper as well. And you might have noticed that there are two different colors when flowing. And this reason is pretty simple. If you can tell by up there, you want to flow your arguments in one color, and you want to flow your opponent's arguments in another color. In this case, it's black and red ink on a blue piece of paper. That allows you to recognize what arguments you were making and what arguments your opponent was making. So in order to flow properly, you are going to need two different colors. As well, you will also notice that each flow is broken into columns. And just like there are different colors, you want to be able to keep organized by putting them into arguments into columns as well. So the 1AC got the far left column, and if it's a position made by the affirmative, it will have 7 columns. The 1AC, the 1NC, the 2AC, the negative block, so the 2NC and the 1NR, the 1AR, the 2NR, and the 2AR. The reason the block is written as 1 is because the affirmative has not responded to those arguments, so it wouldn't make sense to put them into a new column because the affirmative hasn't developed anything or answered any of those arguments. So they stay singular in that sort of aspect. When it's a negative position, we look at our economy just a again, you'll have 6 columns. The 1NC, the 2AC, the block, the 1AR, the 2NR, and the 2AR. Now, when you actually go about flowing an argument, everything that you want to flow, every argument that's made, which is a claim or a warrant, and specifically, you want to make sure that you flow every card that is read on a particular argument. And the way you flow a card is you'll put the tag. So what was the tag of the card that was just being used? And then I put a line here, and you can use whatever symbol you want. Some people use X's. And that line denotes to me that it was a card that was read and not an analytic argument. Because if it's an analytic argument, all you're going to do is write a tag for that analytic argument. Or if it's a card, I'll put the tag of the argument, I'll put a line, and then I'll put the author of the card, I'll put the date of the card, because both of those things could be important for when you are doing your C's part of the 3 R's and the C's. And then I will put a little tick mark and anything or any kind of warrants that I specifically want to talk about, or anything of interest that I might hear from the cards that are either being read by my team or the opponents. And so that's the basic structure for how you flow something. You will notice that both of these have some different shorthands throughout them. You'll notice that you can create any shorthand you want on your flow as long as you remember what that shorthand is. For example, although it's not up here, I would always write big topic countries with their first initial and then with a circle around it. So Russia would be an R with a circle in it. If I'm saying increasing, I can put an arrow that is in the up direction. Same thing if it's down, I can put it in the opposite direction. A circle with an X around it means kills or stops or destroys or death. So cap and trade destroys the economy. That circle with one mark around it means not. That means key. These are all S with a circle around it means solves. These are all shorthands that I've created myself through years of experience, but you can set up your own system for how you want to flow an argument. The other thing you want to notice about both of these pieces of paper is that there's pretty decent spacing between each of the arguments that was made. In this case, the 1NC, and in this case, the 1AC. And the reason you want to have decent spacing between the arguments, and maybe even more spacing than this, is if there's going to be a debate that takes place on that argument, you want to be able to write multiple arguments that your opponent makes in response to that. And we'll sort of show that here in a second. But you want to make sure that you space things correctly in case your opponent makes multiple arguments. For example, they could make multiple arguments as to why global warming is not occurring right now. And so you want to be able to have space to write all 3 or 4 of those arguments that they're going to make right here without overlapping with the space for the cap and trade solves warming. And they might read 3 or 4 arguments as to why it can't solve for warming either. And so you want to have space in between arguments. The next thing we'll sort of talk about is how it dictates things. So in order to do that, I'm going to show you a nuclear war debate. So the 1AC here made an argument that said that nuclear war causes extinction. This would just be some sort of impact argument that takes place. So the 1NC would make a laundry list of arguments, and you would just do what's called flowing those arguments straight down. And so you would go straight down like this. You see that nuclear war causes extinction because of nuclear winter. And then over here you see it doesn't cause extinction. The Krakatoa volcano explosion disproves. Doesn't cause extinction because it uses bad science. Doesn't cause extinction because their bombs are less. And so it causes for bad computer models to be used. Well, when the 2AC would respond to this argument, they would go off of this flow. So on case positions, so for example, if you have this argument right here, and the 1 in C would make some arguments like no global warming, global warming doesn't equal extinction, cap and trade doesn't solve, and maybe a couple other arguments. That would dictate the order that the 2AC answers them. So that even though there is a solvency or link argument right here that comes after an impact card, that doesn't mean you talk about it in 1AC order. Instead, you will talk about it in 1NC order. So you'd first answer no global warming, then global warming doesn't equal extinction, you'd answer that, then you'd answer cap and trade can solve, then you'd answer this argument. On an off case position, it's similar. So this is a disad. The 2AC could say something like econ down now. Then you could say something like cap and trade increases the economy, and then because of innovation. Cap and trade increases the economy because, and then you could say something like increases the economy because of new business models. The point is that the block, again, would not answer it in 1NC order and talk about their uniqueness, then their length, and then their impact, but instead would answer things in the 2AC order. So remember, the rule here is that whatever the second column is, that dictates the order you answer things in. So you would come up in the negative block, if you are negative here, and you would answer this argument first, then you would answer this argument, then you would answer this argument. You would not go in 1NC order, but instead would go in 2AC order. And if we go back to this impact play out that's occurring right here, you can see how this happens. So we started with the nuclear war causes extinction. They said Krakatoa. And so we read a piece of evidence in the 2AC that says that different type of soot would be emitted in a nuclear war, and that ends up causing a different thing to occur. The models are good now. Your evidence is old, from 99. Ours is from 04. It's better. They fixed the computer models. And down here, just say it would escalate, so everything would be used because of dead hand. And that means that even if it's low megatons, the total would still be the same, which means that the computer models are good. So hopefully you've got sort of a brief understanding of what it means to flow and how you would flow arguments. We will put documents in the practice session, and you will have to flow a 1AC, a 1NC, a 2AC, and a 2NC just to get some practice, and we'll show you what that should look like on the website as well.